Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to an edition of the All Hogs podcast. I am the All Hogs editor, Kent Smith, and today our topics have a lot to do with recruiting. So we decided we would bring on our All Hogs recruiting expert, Jacob Davis. Jacob, thank you for joining us today. What's been going on in the world of recruiting with the Razorbacks?
Well, Arkansas has been really heavy throughout the entire country. Really, Arkansas has been in California. I think Travis Williams has been around there. You've got Jimmy Smith meddling in Georgia. You've got Sam Pittman kind of staying in the area of Arkansas and Oklahoma. He's been hanging out with Morgan Turner a lot, and then you've got Marcus Woodson. He's everywhere. He's it's amazing how much ground 11 guys, 10 guys can make up. Man, it's just crazy where they're at and what they're after. We talked about it in a couple of articles. We talked about the importance of even Tay Lockett, 2026 commitment, going out there and recruiting guys. We mentioned that. Man, really, Arkansas is after a lot of guys right now all over the country, and they're not afraid to go after some of the likes of Ohio State's, Alabama's, Florida, Georgia. They're not backing down.
I'm a little surprised to see them recruiting California so heavy, but I'm even more surprised to see that it's, the photos I saw, it's Travis Williams out there as opposed to the tight ends coach Turner. I thought, if they opened that up, that was going to be 100% him going out there trying to do that. So kind of what's going on there?
So I don't know. That was a really interesting deal. I know that Arkansas has had some success, especially recently with the Bixby community, with Luke has and Dylan has coming over. Maybe there's a tight end they're looking at. I do believe there might be a. There's obviously a prospect down in Benton too. Now, as far as the California stuff goes, I'm really kind of surprised because Travis Williams is more of an Alabama guy, South Carolina guy, that region. So honestly, it's kind of unpredictable right now where they're going and why they're doing that. Morgan Turner also has some family around this area too, around this region. So there could be a reason why maybe they're trying to venture out, do some new things. But really, honestly, I'm not too sure what the focus is right now and what the thought process is of changing up the recruiting maps because Arkansas has never really had a recruiting footprint that I recall over the past 4 or 5 years in the state of California.
Yeah, I can't remember anybody coming from out there. There was, I think when Nolan Richardson was around in basketball, they tried to pull some guys, and obviously Musselman
Yep.
tried to get out there, if anything, just to go catch a few games while he's out there. But football wise, no. I mean, and I thought it might open a little bit with Turner, at least for a few years, just because
Right.
he's got connections. But it's like you said, it sounds like they changed the philosophy. They're not doing the natural regions that you kind of see. Like used to, you had a guy who was assigned to Arkansas, Northern Louisiana, you had a Texas guy and things like that. And you've got natural fits here for Florida, for Alabama, for Georgia, places like that. And seeing those guys get shipped to the other coast, to California, I mean, there's inroads to be made, obviously. There's not a Pac-12 left anymore. Maybe those guys don't want to go play up in the cold in the Big Ten, so might as well bring them to the SEC.
You're right. And in the process of going more of a national, I mean, it's wide open now. Like there's, like you said, there's nothing in the Northeast. I mean, West right now, corner of the United States. So why not go after these guys that you would usually go to the Stanfords and the Oregon States and with Cal and Stanford moving over to the ACC, it kind of opens up where everybody's going to be a national recruiter. And these days with the transfer portal and everything, it makes sense for Arkansas to go more of a national approach. You think about teams like Oklahoma, who Oklahoma's always kind of had a rich population of talent throughout their state. But Arkansas, even over the past decade, even when they had Barry Odom as defensive coordinator and several other assistant coaches that had Oklahoma roots, Arkansas was able to take in some guys like AJ Green from that state. You were able to get a few guys out of Texas and all that, but the way that Oklahoma recruits now with they recruit nationally, so it expands Arkansas's regional reach.
Mhm.
a little bit. And so, and then with the Pac-12 dissolving, I think Arkansas is going to be able to do some do more recruiting, maybe expand their reach as far as what the Hog can do.
Oh, it's a wise move when you really think about it. I mean, you kind of wonder, are the other teams thinking the same way? If you're a kid who was going to go to Stanford, you can go play football at Stanford, and it's Stanford football. You still got to fly all the way to Florida to play your games, and South Carolina and things like that. If you're going to fly to Florida and to South Carolina, you might as well start in the SEC, playing SEC football, cut the distance down, better facilities, better tradition, things like that. So that makes sense. I mean, logically, not the worst idea in the world.
No. And you look at it now, I mean, there's Arkansas still bringing in guys with the transfer portal, so it kind of makes sense too. They kind of go hand in hand because you can say, hey, I've got a couple of guys here from California. So I mean, yeah, you may be 2 or 3 years apart in age and classification, but hey, we got your California flavor, we got your northern, Ohio flavor, we got your Florida flavor, like there's guys all around the country just going everywhere. And you look at the transfer portal right now with over 3,000 student athletes in it. I mean, they're just going everywhere. And it just, you've got guys that have probably never been out of the state of Florida or out of South Carolina or Georgia going all the way to Texas, Arizona, Washington. It's just endless. It's a weird development in college football, but I love it. It just makes things interesting. And it's kind of something you've always wanted to kind of see happen with college football is no longer is it a regional game, it's nationwide.
I might as well take a second to address the elephant in the room. With all the cold outside and everything, we've had a couple flies that have come in the house. So yeah, there's one buzzing around, kind of driving me nuts a little bit. So we'll fight through it as best we can. Um, one thing that I have noticed, and thank goodness you came along because I used to have to do the recruiting stuff, and man, just following high schoolers all the time, and then especially when the transfer portal came along, it is a thankless, exhausting job. You do the work of saints, and we greatly appreciate it here. I'm so
Yes, sir.
happy. I'm so happy to not get that notice in the middle of Christmas dinner and have to get up and just run out to the car and turn on you know, the satellite internet in the middle of nowhere, Arkansas, visiting family and try to put something together real quick. So thank you so much for what you've done. You've done a wonderful job. We've been so happy with the things that you've done, and I'm sure the fans have been too.
I do appreciate that. Thank you.
The one thing that I've noticed though is when I first started doing that, Arkansas recruited, especially northern Louisiana, really heavily.
Hmm.
And toward the end of me doing this and you taking over, I started noticing there wasn't, especially when Pittman came along, not a lot of emphasis on those northern Louisiana kids. They've gotten a few guys transfers from LSU, and they did have early on a Louisiana kid or two because we kind of did a almost a wife swap kind of thing with LSU, but they really haven't hit northern Louisiana very hard. Are you hearing any noise at all out of northern Louisiana?
No, and I have family in Spring Hill. If you remember, Arkansas had they were in it's during the Bielema days. There was a guy I can't remember his name now. He played linebacker at LSU. Now he's playing for Tampa Bay, and I'm going blank on his name. Sorry, guys, but that was really the last time Arkansas was really going after anybody in that area. Really, that that whole Louisiana to this Louisiana State. But I just, you think about the towns of you think about Bastard, Weston, all those towns, you even Neville, they produce a lot of really good football talent. Now, I remember talking about a kid a couple of weeks ago that received an Arkansas offer, and that was from Neville. He was from Neville High School, which is right down. It's like I don't know what you'd call it, just a community off of Monroe, Louisiana. But that was he was a little wide receiver, and that was really the last time I remember hearing anybody from Arkansas after a guy from North Louisiana. So that's kind of a mystery. I guess it kind of you've got to figure out, and do a really good job at kind of scanning out what is out there. And right now, there may not be necessarily a lot of really good athletes north of Alexandria, Louisiana.
I'd say Neville used to be, a hotbed for talent.
Yeah.
They were one of the big national teams. You had some kids coming out of Shreveport and Ruston and places like that. Just haven't heard much lately. So, you
Yeah.
know,
It's kind of dried up. And Pine Bluff used to be a region that was rich in talent. But Shreveport, I mean, crime's gone up. People have moved out of there, and so I mean, along with that, the base of talent may have moved out of there too, and moved to other places, maybe just a little bit west into Texas. That could be the case for Shreveport and Bossier. But yeah, that area of the state of Louisiana just it's kind of dried up a little bit. It's kind of like what South Arkansas has become too.
so you mentioned Texas, and I don't think it's a whole lot of secret and talk about it quite a bit. Um, I'm on the Chad Morris plan for the time being, the bouncing back and forth between Arkansas and North Texas. I've got a daughter who's, she graduates this year, so we couldn't pull up roots, but I've got land up in Northwest Arkansas, and we're up there all the time, kind of going back and forth. Happen to live in an area where, the hog is strong in this area. Just going to be honest with you, down the street, Houston Nuts a few miles down the road. Darren McFadden's just down the road. Torrey Hunter owns the barbecue joint, just up the road from me. And there's a ton of Razorback fans. You see a lot of Oklahoma fans, a lot of Oklahoma State. You get some Baylor. You don't see weirdly enough, you don't see a lot of Texas Longhorn fans around here. But within a 20-mile circle is probably the most dense, over the top talent pool you can possibly think of. So think guys like Jalen Braxton, um, the kid who is taking over at quarterback at Oklahoma. He was a 5-star. My daughter's team,
Jackson Arnold.
yeah, my daughter's team played them, uh, every year. I got to go watch Jackson Arnold play. They actually pulled the upset. The team that Chad Morris coached, South Lake Carroll, which sends out so much talent. Half the NFL is from South Lake Carroll, it seems like. They're right down the road. They're another team that, my daughter's school plays. So there's a ton of talent here, a ton of talent, and Arkansas gets in on it. So, one thing I don't miss is having to find Kendall Brow's mom mobile riding around town, because he'd roll through all the time. McKinney, Frisco, Louisville, Allen, Plano, all those areas are just stacked with talent, and they were in here all the time. But I had someone talking to me the other day, and they're like, "Hey, what's why do you see players from places like Arkansas, Mississippi, and Louisiana to an extent, even though we haven't seen a lot of it? They come in with lesser stars, but a lot of times they'll leave, um, maybe the better, more developed talent." And I can explain exactly why that is. The kids that are here in North Texas, especially, and then when you get down around Houston, just outside the suburbs there and stuff like that, they're in essentially college programs. I there is a journalism teacher who used to be there in Arkansas, and she came out here to Texas, and she was teaching. She used to do a thing where she would compare. They do competitive journalism here, like it's really hardcore, and she would compare her staff that she had to get ready to win a state title, and she was expected to win a state title every year, to the football staff, which was getting 3 wins. And so she had, it was her and one other teacher, and she was breaking down all the different areas they were over. And she was like, if I could get a headline coordinator, and I could get a feature writing coordinator, and I could get someone over here just to oversee copy editing and all this stuff. And she named off something for every position they had on the football team. There were 17, I think there were 17 coaches on the football team. And they wasn't like, a lot of these schools where you got like 180 kids or something playing football. They didn't have a lot. They had like a football coach for like every 4 kids. And so, I was thinking about that. These guys, when you get a Texas athlete, especially from these areas, you're getting a guy who is ready made. He's more likely to be able to walk in day one and cause a stir, okay, because he's had individualized coaching. He's been in the best possible facilities. Okay, there are very few D2 schools that have facilities like we have here for high school. They're not playing in 17 to 20,000 seat stadiums with weight gyms built inside them and all this stuff. They're not working out in the facilities that these kids have. These are borderline college level workout facilities. Um, they have a 7-on-7 state championship here where there's a whole extra season of football. You get fall, you get off-season weight training, you get spring ball, and then you go into 7-on-7, and you have a state championship in 7-on-7 here in Texas. So you're getting all
I
that
had no
extra
idea.
work in. Yeah, you're getting all that extra work in. Um, the coaches have non-mandatory workouts at 5 a.m. every day here, which we all know are mandatory. And then on top of that, like, the access to technology they have, just constantly studying film and studying film and studying film and learn how to do that. And it's nonstop. You know, you walk into a school here to meet with a kid, he's going to be walking around with a giant gallon jug with the school logo on it, and it's going to be filled with water, and he's required to have it drank by the time he gets to practice. He's going to have all this nutrition information and stuff. Whereas I don't know how things were where you played, but where I played, we had 3 coaches total. 2 of them were coaching junior high on top of it. And so you had a head coach, an offensive coach, and a defensive coach. And that was it. That was all you had. The weight gym was just, I mean, we had for Arkansas, we had a decent weight gym down in Warren. But it was nothing like what these guys are dealing with. We had no nutrition. Our nutrition was, can you run down to Hardee's in between, time for the team meal or something like that? Here, take a salt tablet before you go out on the field. Maybe grab a banana. That was what we had. So you get these guys who are coming out of Texas who they have been through elite, and I do mean elite level training, and they are ready for college. But they're already up here and their ceiling's here. There's not a lot of room to grow these guys other than them growing into their bodies and what little bit you're going to get extra on top of that. And some of the mental knowledge. Jalen Braxton was sitting out here a few miles down the road working with professional athletes every day, nonstop. College players, pro players, nonstop. Dak Prescott showing up throwing balls over there where he's working out, and he's going against those guys. That's not happening. You're not going down to Rise in Arkansas, and all of a sudden, I don't know, Tom Brady shows up, wants to start throwing balls around, and he brings his favorite NFL wide receivers with him. And that doesn't happen. So when an Arkansas guy gets on campus, yeah, maybe he's a 3-star, but he's here. And they can build him and build him and build him and build him, and maybe his ceiling gets up higher than the Texas guy by the 3rd year. Same for the Mississippi guys, Northern Louisiana guys. Those guys aren't dealing with the coaching, the direct coaching. There's a lot of really good coaches in Arkansas, really good coaches, but they can only put so much time into a player. There's only so much, those guys can learn, only so much they can do. Okay. If you're Traylon Burks, you're out cross training with hogs in the woods. You're not going through
No.
elite performance centers down the road and stuff like that. But there's a high ceiling that you've got there. And plus, those guys, when they get here, they've been raised on the Razorbacks. They want to be Razorbacks. It's their thing. So they push themselves even higher than their ceilings a lot of times. Grant Morgan's ceiling was not that high.
No.
Not. I was just looking it up for a story I just did. He was a number 22 player in Arkansas. There is no way the number 22 player in the state of Arkansas, especially given how few athletes there are actually even playing the sport, should ever be an all SEC player. But he got there and he made that big jump, and then
He worked.
that little extra, belief in the hog kind of thing pushes it up to that extra level. And then suddenly you got a guy who, you almost can't lose with him on the field
Yeah.
because
And you're thinking about it. Like you think about the 2019, 2020 season with Arkansas they were just terrible. Or 2018, 2019, Arkansas was just terrible. And if you lost like Scuda or you lost Dre Greenlaw, you thought you were gonna have a significant drop off. But it's like you said, the heart of the hog is strong. And that's what Grant did. That's exactly what he did. He grew into it. There is no way, anyway, no way a guy like that should ever become an All American.
Mhm.
But it's the heart. And that's the thing. You think about a guy like Mike Woods, who he came in as a freshman, and you're thinking, oh, from Central Tech, Magnolia, Texas, he's probably going to be a project player a while. He came in, he put in the work, and he was one of the best receivers Arkansas had immediately.
Mhm.
Like that's what's crazy. Why you have guys like Grant Morgan or even Drew Morgan who had to put in the
Exactly.
work to get what he wanted. You just don't have those guys sitting around in other places compared to Arkansas, especially when you dream about being a Razorback.
And you think about that, Greenwood is one of the better programs in Arkansas.
Right.
Tyler Wilson had to come in, he had to put in a ton of work. You know, he was one of those guys that was kind of last minute add on. The story behind him getting there and all that's pretty crazy. And he was going to be, I think it was Tulsa maybe was where he was going to go.
Yeah.
And he got thrown at the last minute. He put in the work. He's coming from a great program, but there's only so much you can do in those great programs. There's not a, like I said, there's not a performance center down the street. There's not a guy working with just quarterbacks nonstop, 7 days a week and stuff. So they're down on the floor. The ceiling's so high, they just need those years to do it. So that's why when you see a lot of people gauge the recruiting class by how many Arkansas players are on it. And they think the more Arkansas players are on it, the worse it's going to be. And yes, if you're looking at immediate impact, in most cases, it probably is not going to be the greatest up front at the beginning. But as you move forward, you get to years 2 and years 3, those guys develop. They really, really want to put in the work because they really want to be on that field delivering, wearing that Razorback red.
Yeah. And you think about I had the roster, the 2021 roster pulled up here, and that was really our last great season. And it's sprinkled with guys, whether they were from Arkansas, Northern Louisiana, Texas. You've got Jalen Catalon on this team. You've got Katron Jackson. You bring in Malik Chavis, who was a rising guy. You bring in Corian Carter. You had Bumper Pool. You had Davion Warren from Little Monroe, Louisiana. These are guys that were, you know, Traylon Burks, Hudson Clark, Dominic Johnson. The list goes on and on and on with guys that were just they weren't really highly recruited players. Maybe they were 4 stars and needed a little bump. Maybe they were Arkansas bred kids and they just needed to work a little bit. It was a perfect combination between recruiting, development, and talent. And that's what Arkansas needs. Maybe it is an every 4 or 5 year thing. You have to get the right combination of guys in the Razorback program for it to have success. Also, you had Grant Morgan, Hayden Henry, uh, two linebackers that were just studs, and then I can't remember the third linebacker on that roster that was in there too, but they just had a lot of guys working together. And then you had the inception of the transfer portal around that time, and you were able to bring in guys like Ridgeway. You were able to bring in Markel Utze from Missouri, Arkansas kid out of Little Rock. There was just a lot of there was a lot of it was like a perfect storm, to be honest with you.
I do kind of wonder with the transfer portal if that makes it harder for those Arkansas stories where the kid who builds over time uh, is possible now because there's so much pressure to win now and there's so much pressure to flip the uh, flip the roster.
Right.
Whether you have a lot of guys who would eventually grow into that after, but you don't have the 3 or 4 years to wait on that to happen. If that's going to impact, if a lot of those stories that we used to get, if that's maybe becoming a thing in the past.
You think about Isaiah Satania in both years that I mean he came in just all American, 1928-yard receiver, 20 touchdowns as a high school senior at a Fayetteville High School. He's come in all track athlete, great speed, but he just hasn't had the success right away that we thought that maybe a guy like he should have, And a lot of that maybe due to bringing in guys out of the transfer portal, like your Isaac Tesla and Andrew Armstrong, Tyrone Broden. You think about the year before last with the kid from Toledo that came in and Jaden Hazelwood. There was a lot of times where you're thinking, okay, maybe we can get him in here, get him some speed, put him in the slot, whatever. And Maybe it's just the concepts, offensive concepts that Arkansas installed that maybe it, if they don't attack the middle of the field, there's no reason to have Isaiah Satania out there. Now you move into the Bobby Petrino era, and maybe you will see some of the offensive guys, offensive skill guys from this state be able to have more success. And they can look back at the time where Bobby Petrino coached offense and he had guys like, I mean, and we're going to, pump the brakes a little bit. You had all world guys like Jarius Wright, Joe Adams, Greg Childs, Chris Gregg. The list goes on and on. Tyler Wilson. You had all those guys in one class, and obviously they're not going to be like that every year, but it kind of gives you the hope as an Arkansas kid that, hey, when Arkansas was at their best with Bobby Petrino, he used a lot of Arkansas guys up there that ended up having success in his offense. So, and that was 12, 14 years ago now, but still some things change and some things stay the same. And I think Arkansas guys, if they want to be a hog, they're going to fight to be a hog.
So, well, let's close it out on this one note.
Okay.
From this recruiting class and say like the next class or two we got coming up, who is the guy who's possibly got the chip on his shoulder and the work ethic and everything to be maybe that breakout guy from the state of Arkansas?
I've got one guy, 2025, Grayson Wilson. And I'm telling you, because this guy, he came in, he was virtually a 3-star, goes to the All American Combine down there in San Antonio, and just blows scouts away. I mean, the guy, he's grown 2 inches, he's gotten a little bit more of a frame going. I mean, he's got a smooth pass. A guy's going to be a leader. He's a vocal leader. I mean, he's kind of got the traits of, okay, this is going to be my team at some point, and we're going to break through. And I think that's a guy. He's already committed. He wants to be a Razorback. I think he's going to fight. And he's got a dad too that pushes him hard. He's had a fair. I mean, he's had great coaching over there at Central Arkansas Christian. I really do believe he's going to be a difference maker for the Razorback program moving forward.
Yeah, I will say my interaction with him and his family is limited, but in the interactions I've had, the chip on the shoulder part's definitely there. He's definitely competitive, got an edge to him. It's going to be fun to see what he can do.
It's remarkable. I tell you, he's got it. He's got it. Whatever it may be, he's got it.
All right, well, that's going to wrap it up for us here at All Hogs. I appreciate you taking the time to come in and check us out and hear what we have to say. Jacob, thank you so much for hopping on, and for everybody in Arkansas and the surrounding states. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kent Smith. Have a good rest of your day.